Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's rule in Syria has come to an end. He has fled Damascus and rebel forces have entered in the capital. His destination is yet not known, but Syria is now without Assad, as claimed by many sources. The incident signifies an end to 50 years' rule of the Assad dynasty. Syrian Prime Minister Mohammed al-Jalali, who is still in the city, has said that he is ready to cooperate with any leadership chosen by the people and for any handover process after rebels take control of the administration. The rebels have said that public institutions will remain under al-Jalali for now. The rebel forces entered Damascus shortly on Sunday after capturing the strategic city of Homs, severing the capital from the coastal region that is a stronghold of Assad's Alawite sect and where his Russian allies have a naval base as well as an air base. Assad left the Syrian capital on a plane. His whereabouts are not known yet. Meanwhile, the rebels have also broken into the Sednaya prison near Damascus. Several anti-regime figures have been jailed there and have been freed. Let's now take a look at the history of the Syrian conflict. Inspired by the Arab Spring uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, peaceful protests started in March 2011 there. Protests aimed at establishing democracy in Syria. Peaceful uprising against President Bashar al-Assad turned into a full-scale civil war. Issues of unemployment, widespread corruption and lack of political freedom did come up. Also, the government used deadly force to crush protests. So the question now is, who was involved in the Syrian conflict? Well, there are groups that include Free Syrian Army, also known as FSA, Kurdish rebel fighters, Jabhat Fatr al-Sham, also known as ISIS, Hezbollah, Syrian Democratic Forces. Besides that, there's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Russia, Iran-backed Syrian government opposition, supported by Turkey, several Western powers, some Gulf Arab states. So the opposition is, of course, supported by Turkey and several Gulf Arab states. Moving on now, US President-elect Donald Trump has said that the country should not get involved in Syria. He added that Syria is not Washington's friend. In a social media post, Trump called Syria a mess. He also said that Russia, which has backed President Bashar al-Assad, was incapable of stopping rebels' march to Damascus as it was tied up in Ukraine. So DD India's Amit Mukherjee is now joining us live for more on this. Amit, as per reports, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has left Damascus by plane for an unknown destination. Now, Assad's family, we know, has been holding power there since 1971. So does it now clearly look like the end of 54 years of their family rule?
Well, very much so, Munmun. In fact, if you look at how things panned out in the last over the last 7 days, in fact, less than 7 days after the fall of Aleppo, where the rebels had taken over, followed by Hama and then Homs yesterday, and then after taking over that city, which is again the place where the entire uprising against the Assad government had started way back in 2011, 10-11. So that is the place one reckons with right now. Home, and close to it is about 180 kilometers where the capital of Syria is, Damascus. So it's very rebels have already started entering that place, and the rebels have already announced that it is the end of Assad. They have taken over the television and radio stations in Damascus, and it is very clear that they are sending out a message that it's now time for the change of the regime, and it will be people of Syria who will now take charge. They will be in control. The fight which they had, the revolution which had started to seek democracy, to install, a democratic setup in Syria, it seems that it has finally, a dream come true for most of the rebels right now. Munmun?
We'll take that point further, Amit, but before that, Assad's allies, including Iran and Russia, have been weakened and distracted by other events in the world, for instance, the Russia-Ukraine war. And besides that, of course, Iran is involved in what is happening in West Asia. Trump has signaled, though, that he'd prefer a hands-off approach to Syria compared to what the US has had a decade ago. So did these factors really precipitate a regime change, if we can call it that?
Yes,
Yes.
definitely to a certain extent, but I would not really say that Assad's ally has fallen weak. If you look at Russia, they have just been their attentions have been diverted. I wouldn't really say Russia or Iran has fallen weak. It's just that they have been engaged in other frontiers, which is why probably that gave a chance to the rebels, to consolidate their position. And if you look at how the events unfolded, it's very clear that the rebels have been talking with their allies. It's not very clear as to who is supporting them, definitely, but definitely they have some sort of a support. Otherwise, where else would they be getting the funds, the ammunitions, the armored vehicles, which are now rolling on the streets of Damascus? So definitely there is some support that they are getting. But as of now, when we look at the whole situation, everybody has distant. I mean, they have categorically made it very, very clear it's not our war. If you look at Trump, that's what he said. It's not our war. Let's stay away from it. Even Russia, to a certain extent, in fact, the rebels had been sending Russian administration fillers also that the war is not against them. It's against the Assad's rule, which had actually suppressed democracy for a long time. So, I mean, somewhere the rebels, apart from preparing their military contingents, to launch this assault against Assad, they have also been reaching out on a lot of diplomatic fronts, along with various countries. Now, if you look at Syria, it is surrounded by 5 countries, with Turkey on top, Iraq on the western eastern side, followed by again Jordan and Israel, and of course, Lebanon, where the Hezbollah has been extending a lot of support, from where they have been extending support to Assad's government. Now, Hezbollah, if you look at Lebanon has also, pulls its hands away. In fact, the Hezbollah operatives who were actually stationed along Syria and Lebanon border, they have also been pulled away. So the message is very, very clear, probably. And, it's time for the regime to change in Syria. And somewhere the rebels have been very successful in kind of, establishing diplomatic channels, multiple, allies, which we are not still very clear of. But yeah, definitely they have done that.
So the question really is what happens next, because we've heard from the Syrian Prime Minister saying that he's ready for the handover process. But this insurgency has been led by Islamist rebels from a group known as HTS, and their roots are in Al-Qaeda, and for years they've been trying to rebrand themselves as a nationalist force. But many are not convinced, and they say that they remain an extremely violent organization and are concerned about what might come next. So could this mean more anarchy in that part of the world?
Well, if we go by facts, Munmun, it is a fact that HTS's leader, Jolani, has been an operative of the Al-Qaeda in the past. But if you look at how things are again unfolding right now, he is signing his statements under his real name. Now, Jolani is what his acquired name was when he had been operating as an extremist and an associate of Al-Qaeda. But now all the statements that he's signing are under the name of Ahmed Hussein Al-Shara. That is his real name. So it is very, very clear he's trying to distance himself from his previous Al-Qaeda links. He is reaching out to people of Syria. He has said that there will be peaceful coexistence. He has reached out to all those who have been indirectly engaged, the countries which have been indirectly engaged in this whole conflict, and saying it is the war within the country against, a certain regime. It's not with, whether it's Iran or whether it's Russia. So they have been very, very categorical. The rebels have been very categorical in stating that. And in fact, a lot of analysts are looking at Jolani as a person who has transformed from being a jihadist to a pragmatist. So all the steps he's taking, the moves he's making, the statements he's making, seem to be striking the right chords at this point in time, as far as the change of regime is concerned. And the question of whether there will be an anarchy, that is kind of slowly being addressed by the rebels.
Right. Also, considering the situation in Syria economically and socially, 90% of the people in Syria are living under the poverty line, and many are living in limbo and displacement camps. So what is their future now, you think?
Well, yes, that has been one of the reasons where, why this uprising has been successful. The war against, of the rebellions against Assad has been successful because they somewhere has probably gained the support of the people. If you look, I mean, either people out there in Syria, either very rich, the landlord class, or they are very, very poor. So they have been deprived of the basic amenities, and Assad's regime, they have been saying that it has been very, very oppressive. You know, if you look at what has been happening in the last 24 hours, the prisons have been opened, and, you know, those who have been held captive by Assad's forces, you know, they have been freed. And we saw, you know, there are reports and footages of people, of prisoners, the so-called prisoners under the Assad regime, walking free along the streets. And that is one of the steps that the rebels have taken to free people who have been held captive. Thousands of people who were held captives under the Syrian dispensation, you know, under Assad's regime. So to a certain extent, to somewhere, they are striking the right chord, and that's what they're saying. The Syria will now be for its people, which means that the poverty which has been there, the oppression which has been there, that will be addressed by the rebels. That's what their objective is right now, Munmun.
Right, we'll leave it at that. Amit Mukherjee reporting from New Delhi on the developments in Syria.